Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Matt Phillips is my special guest once again. And Matt and I are going to talk about our top 10 favorite live albums. And, you know, we all know that live albums aren't necessarily live, but for whatever reason, these are albums that we listen to a lot, that maybe have really good versions of some of our favorite songs and have been with us for a long time, or maybe not necessarily a long time. So Matt and I have we have a couple honorable mentions too. So I think what we'll do is we'll just run down through our list. So Matt, let's have your top 10, your number 10 live album.
Okay, so I'm starting off with, actually, it's more like an EP, but I just love the singer and band so much, I had to include it. I kind of went back and forth, but there's a specific reason I want to talk about this one. So my number 10 is actually by Skid Row. I believe it's really their only official kind of quote unquote live album. This one came out on July 25th of 1995. And I believe it was reissued just last year they had like an Atlantic Years box set.
Yeah.
Now, this is originally came out, so it's a 6-song EP. It's got Slave to the Grind, a cover of Judas Priest song, Delivering the Goods. It's got Beat Yourself Blind, which would have been from their then current Subhuman Race album, Psychotherapy, Riot Act, and Monkey Business. I really like this album, but what I love even more, actually, I eventually found an unofficial live DVD from Skid Row. And this is what you've got to have. If you left Skid Row, you've got to check this out. This is like a full set list. I believe this is from, Tokyo, Japan. Tons of songs on here covering a lot of songs from all three of their albums. So this is the Subhuman Beings on Tour. This is not official, but I think this is fairly easy to find online. So anyway, that's my number 10, Skid Row.
Yeah, that's part of that vinyl box set, which I'd love to have, but it's pretty pricey. So my number 10 is an album that I've only been familiar with for about, I'd say, the last 4 years or so. This is Yes Shows. Cool. This is from 1980. This is actually an unopened 8-track that I found.
Nice.
It says $7.99 on it. So I don't know if that would have been full price. Probably not. It's a double album. Beautiful Roger Dean artwork. And, a lot of people that like Yes will talk about their first live album, which is called Yes Songs. It gets confusing. There's Yes Songs, Yes Shows, Yes Story, Yes Years. And, the first album's incredible. They were a younger band and with playing abilities to no end. But I really like the time period. Sometimes it's the time period covered. And this covers the Going for the One, Tormato period, and yes, late 70s period. So I really, really like those two albums. Also, it doesn't have any of Rick Wakeman's solo excursions where he'll do 10 minutes of Catherine the Great or whatever. It's a pretty solid rocking live album too. It's got the Gates of Delirium on it, Don't Kill the Whale, Going for the One. I really like the performances on this album. And if I'd pick one Yes album, it's this one. So Matt's number 9 now.
Right, my number 9. This is an interesting one because this is actually the first home video, plus it's sort of like a CD, DVD package that I've owned from this band. This is Whitesnake Live in the Still of the Night. Came out in February of 2006. So this is actually one of those packages back then where you could buy stuff that I really love. You could buy the live DVD, and it also came with a CD that had most of the tracks on it. Now, why was I buying Whitesnake? I mean, I was never actually a huge Whitesnake fan, but when this came out in 2006, there wasn't a lot of bands that I liked putting out new music, and I think I saw a clip of Burn. They opened this with Burn. An absolutely killer version. My CD just fell out on me. Everybody see it before. But really, really, really love this concert package. I'm trying to remember the name. The directed by Hamish Hamilton. I assume he's done some other really well done videos because this is one of the best as far as like camera placement and just hitting on when guys are doing really cool stuff during the songs. Yeah, I just love this. And it has a nice little documentary too. So That's my number
Yeah,
9.
I remember watching that, and I hadn't seen any clips of Coverdale live in years, and I couldn't believe how good he sounded at this
Yeah.
point. At this point, and a great set list. Yeah, opening with Burn. I think they do a little of Stormbringer in there too, and they do "Don't Break My Heart Again," "Take Me With You,"
Yeah.
like some of the pre Geffen year stuff. Yeah, great collection. I have a CD of that, and I think it's the same show. It's called Live in the Shadow of the Blues. It gets confusing with Shadow of the Blues, Heart of the City, Still of the Night, you know. So my number 9 is an album that I've talked about many times before when I've talked about this band, that is unique in that it's a worldwide well-known band and an album that came out in Canada, but didn't initially come out in the States. Didn't come out in the States for 10 years after originally came out. This is Queen Live Magic. And this is a Canadian cassette on Capitol Records, which was their label at the time. And this did not come out in the US. They weren't selling as many albums in the US. But this is, I used to get this mixed up with the Live at Wembley. I used to think this was just a shortened version of it. It's not. If I've got this correct, Live Magic is their Knebworth show. Both shows are from the same tour, Freddie's final tour, August of 1986 or summer of 1986. But I mean, this has One Vision, Tie Your Mother Down, Seven Seas of Rye. You know, it's a rocking concert in a time when a lot of their singles were a little poppier, but you know, even stuff like I Want to Break Free has a little bit of more rock attitude on here. It's just a really, really good concert. I mean, it's Freddie at the height of his powers. And yeah, had to give it a mention somewhere, slotted it in at number 9. So your number 8 live album, Matt.
Number 8, this was maybe my hardest pick as far as, because this artist has done quite a few of these live packages. And yeah, I had to go with, we've shown this on TVC before, but this is Devin Townsend's Retinal Circus Live. This came out in September of 2013. It's really a career spanning collection. I'm not actually going to crack the box set open, but because it's just like a massive kind of thing. If you want to see it, we did a video on this already. But the significant parts about this, so Devin, this is the start of Devin, the Devin Townsend Project, doing these really elaborate live productions, and it's theater and it's visual. And for example, he's got Steve Vai doing the narration for, you know, the crowd is sitting there and the first thing they hear is Steve Vai getting them pumped up for this show and telling them kind of the story behind the concept. There's like a concept of how they brought all these songs together. It's really cool. And also it brought together for the first time in quite a long time, Devin brought on Jed Simon, who was a member of Strapping Young Lad, and they did some Strapping Young Lad stuff too. So that was Devin Townsend. That's my number 8, Devin Townsend's Retinal Circus Live. Career span.
If you want to see more of that, I believe if you look up some of our deluxe edition episodes, I think we did a couple of those, our favorite like deluxe editions or box sets. The next one, my number 8 is, now that I think about it, it's probably the first live album I heard from start to finish because it's among the first cassettes I ever had. This is Journey's 1981 live album, Captured. Cool. And 2 record set. The 8-track, of course, got a lot of tape on it. And this came out right before the Escape album. So this is Journey when they were selling 2-3 million albums. They were doing really well. They were selling at arenas. They hadn't gotten to the stadium level yet. This captures the band when it was their last tour they did with Greg Raleigh. And so it features a lot of material from Infinity, Evolution, Departure, a little bit harder rocking material, but the band all sound fantastic. They're all at the top of their game. Steve Smith on drums, amazing. In some cases, better versions of the songs than that were on, especially the Infinity album, which is a great album. Roy Thomas Baker produced it, kind of overproduced it a little bit. Everything's kind of jam-packed. It was almost like the Loudness Wars in 1978. Everything is just pinned. You know, there's not a lot of dynamic going on. So in some cases, I think that, you know, in some cases, they're the definitive versions of some of these songs. The only thing I regret is that at this period, they were still doing some of the pre-Steve Perry stuff live, like Of a Lifetime and Cahotek. And I know there are live versions of them doing it. So there's an expanded version of Capture that could be done, and I'd like to see it. But that's my number 8.
Awesome. My number 7 is by a fairly reclusive artist. And this one really came out of the blue for me. I wasn't expecting this at all. It was actually quite an event when this came out. Number 7 is Brian Wilson's Live at the Roxy Theater. This came out in 2000. I can't actually remember what month, and I couldn't find the actual month that it came out. But this is a 2 CD set of Brian Wilson covering his solo material and obviously a lot of the great Beach Boys songs. Why this one is significant? Well, I'll give you an example. So he does all the Don't Worry Babies and the Kiss Me Baby and Do It Again and In My Room. He also does some of his solo stuff. And he does like Good Vibrations. But one of the significant things about this, like at this time, Brian Wilson was still not confident about going out and playing live. And he finally hooked up with this band called the Wondermints. And their leader, Darian, really worked on Brian Wilson and helped him get confidence to go out and tour again. And pretty much since this album came out, we've seen Brian putting out music and touring. You know, he's not exactly like, you know, doing 200 shows a year, but this was really significant to getting him out and doing the stuff that we wanted to hear again. And it was also one of those things, there was a lot of dignitaries and rock stars wanted to see what's Brian Wilson up to. I don't know everybody that was in the audience, but I know, like, for example, I know Bon Jovi was in the audience and he's talked about seeing this album live. So yeah, that's my number 7, Brian Wilson live at the Roxy Theater.
And so as a result of that, you get to see him, well, like with the Beach Boys and then on his own, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So my next one, you know, we're going back roughly the same time period, a veteran band. And this is going to, probably a lot of purists are going to roll their eyes at this. I think this is the best live album this group ever did.
Oh,
Led
wow.
Zeppelin, Celebration Day. This is a DVD and CD performance of their historic final gig ever, December 10th, 2007 at the O2 in London for in honor of Ahmet Ertegun of Atlantic Records, who had passed away. And, you know, maybe that was a dying wish of his, because at one point Robert says, "We did it, Ahmet." And this was the reunion that people had wanted forever. And I think the band sounds fantastic on this. Of course, it's Jason Bonham on drums, who does a fine job. I think Robert Plant sings well within his range. You know, he's not doing the crazy high notes anymore, but he doesn't need to. I love the set list. I love the fact that they do For Your Life from Presence, which they had never done live before. And I almost think I equally enjoy the rehearsal footage that's on here.
Yeah. I
would listen to this way before I'd listen to The Song Remains the Same album. There's better performances on here. So yeah, hate mail directed at me.
Yeah.
My number 7.
Right on. I'm going to continue with the Beach Boys theme. Promise you this is the last time I'm going to talk about the Beach Boys, but I had to mention this. My number 6 is the Beach Boys. Not a very exciting title or cover, to be honest with you. It's called the Beach Boys in Concert. This one came out a few months after I was born, actually, November of 1973. I used to have the cassette of this. I've had this vinyl for probably decades now, one of those gatefolds. And the thing I love about this one is this really highlights a period of the Beach Boys that not a lot of people are familiar with. It's the 70s period Beach Boys, when it's not just the core band. They also have Ricky Fataar and Blondie Chaplin, and this is when they're really on fire live. So I've always loved this live concert from the Beach Boys from 1973.
That's the Blondie Chaplin. That's the guy that sings "Sail on Sailor." Am I right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So next one, this one's fun because this is I bought this CD when I was in the process of seeing my very first concert. It's February of 1993. We went to see Bon Jovi, Keep the Faith tour. Talked about that album a couple of weeks ago. And, Portland, Maine. And on that trip, I bought this CD. This is Kansas, Two for the Show. No connection to Bon Jovi, just this is when I bought it. This originally came out in 1978. This is their first live album. And, I like the pun on the title, Two for the Show. There's just these two cleaning ladies in the audience. But yeah, I mean, this was the band, right off of their two big albums, Left Overture, Point of No Return. The band's really, really on fire, taking this difficult material and effortlessly playing it. And so I had to pick something by Kansas. And it comes in at number 6 for me.
Awesome. So we're on to our top 5 now. I would say probably my top 5, a little bit interchangeable, but I do think these 5 I love, maybe not far and above over everything else, but I really love all 5 of these. 4 of them I think are going to be pretty obvious to my taste, but this one might be a little bit of a curveball. My number 5 it's called Live Bootleg by Travis Meeks. It's actually an official album put out by Travis and his management guy. I remember actually talking to him through email at the time, because when I received it, I was like, are you sure you sent me the right thing? This looks like an actual bootleg that somebody, just kind of roughed together. And I was initially kind of put off by it, but it's got 11 songs. And so Travis Meeks is from the band Days of the New. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but they've put out 3 official albums. If I had to make a ranking of my 100 favorite albums of all time, I think all 3 Days of the New records would fit on that list, believe it or not. But this has got your Touch, Peel, and Stand, Dirty Road, The Downtown. Shelf in the Room was a popular song by the Days of the New. What I love about this is just Travis and his acoustic guitar, and he's engaging with the audience, cracking jokes, and you really feel like you're at the actual, it's just a tiny little venue. I'm sure it's like a little pub somewhere, but absolutely love this live album.
If anybody saw me smirk a little bit when Matt said Shelf in the Room, it's because he'd always sing Smurf in the Room.
Yeah.
For some reason. Okay, so my number 5, again, like Matt's, by now you can pretty much predict the bands that are going to be featured. I love getting into bands just as they break up. That's what happened with Y&T. This is Yesterday and Today Live, which was recorded at the end of 1990 on their farewell tour. They would reunite five years later or so. This came out on Metal Blade Records, and it's a 13-song album, pretty much career spanning to something from almost every one of their albums. It's the first time I ever heard anything from their second album, Struck Down. What I liked about this is it was a pretty lengthy write-up in here that filled in some blanks on some information I wasn't aware of. The advantage of having this on, other formats is that you can see there's a really cool collage of like backstage passes. You can see little bits of other artwork of theirs. And it was also the first time I got a good look at what the original Yesterday and Today logo looked like. Cool. Now, a lot of people will say, why didn't you pick something from the original band? Well, yeah, they put out Open Fire in '85. It's only actually got 7 songs on it because Summertime Girls was the studio version. They didn't put out a full-on live album. There's some archival stuff that's really good, but I really like this lineup of Dave Meniketti, Phil Kennemore, Steph Burns, and Jimmy DeGrasso. They handle the old material fine. And I'm glad this wasn't the last thing they put out, but this came in at number 5 for me.
Awesome. My number 4, I'm actually going to need a little bit of assistance from Tim. I've talked to him about this one already. My number 4 is actually Kiss's MTV Unplugged. Oh, he's got it on vinyl.
With this terrible cropping here.
No. So I used to own that on CD, and I wore that thing out. And what I've watched just as much, I have this, the third Kissology, and they thankfully put the entire live MTV Unplugged on the back, I think on disc 1 of the Kissology 3. So Wow. It might actually be my favorite, well, obviously my favorite live Kiss album. The musicianship and the way the band interacts with each other and the songs that they picked. I never get sick of listening to, I could listen to Eric Singer's drum parts from Kiss MTV Unplugged all day long. So I think they were like at the height of their, so obviously they'd been doing these Kiss Expos and learning all this back catalog stuff, but this is when they really sat down and kind of refined it. And I'm ashamed that I don't actually have this anymore. I gave my CD away. It's a long story, but I really have to find that one
again. More on that band later in that time period. My number 4 is another kind of obscure one. I originally bought this in 1990. It wasn't easy to find. I happened to find the cassette of it. And it's a good example of superior versions of songs that were pretty tame in their original versions. This is Sammy Hagar. It's called Loud and Clear. And I think it was either Jack or Kate that found this for me in Nova Scotia.
Oh, yeah.
So, because originally this came out in 1978 in the States, and in Canada called All Night Long, had a different cover. This is the same album. This is the UK version, and it's got an additional song. It's got a version of Space Station Number 5. So a lot of these songs are some of the first older material I ever heard from Sammy, like Red, Rock and Roll Weekend, Turn Up the Music. It's the first stuff I ever heard from the Montrose album. He does Make It Last, Bad Motor Scooter, Space Station Number 5. And I just thought I'd show this version because it's kind of cool. It's kind of different. Same, pretty much the same album as the All Night Long album. Some of these pictures here are the same. But Sammy's original Capitol albums weren't produced all that heavy. Even though you could tell there was heavy riffing there. It's a lot faster live. He's got a lot of energy. And, it's a good introduction. If you really want to get into all of Hagar's catalog, I'd suggest listening to this before listening to the studio versions. That's my number 4.
Awesome. My number 3, I believe, is the first live album that I ever picked up. Probably had this one on cassette at the time. The year that it came out kind of confused me, but this is Ozzy Osbourne's tribute to fallen guitarist Randy Rhoads. This came out in March of 1987. So this was well after we lost Randy. So this is actually even well after Jakey Lee had already left the band, put out this tribute album. Beautiful little write-up from Ozzy on the back. And while I really love, okay, so I'm just gonna show you the gatefold here real quick, but while I love all the songs they've done on here, it's quite a few of, obviously Ozzy solo stuff, but there's some, there's Children of the Grave and Paranoid, so a little bit of Sabbath stuff too, but the thing that I listen to the most, so this is 2 records, so on side 4, you've got the song D, which Randy wrote for his mom, Dolores Rhoads, and it's actually his studio outtakes. And I can't tell you how many times as a kid, 13 or 14 years old, I was sitting with my Walkman and I had my cassette tape and I had it turned up fairly loud. And I'd never even at this point heard Randy talk before. And it's sort of, it's the outtakes of him learning, actually not just recording it in the studio, but actually kind of learning the song. And you can hear him kind of screw up and he'll say, oh, I want to do this one over, or I fingered that chord wrong. And just I don't know if it was the first early kind of ASMR thing that I ever experienced, but even just thinking about it now makes the hair on my arm stand up. Just hearing just his voice and he's wearing it sounds like he's wearing a leather jacket and you can kind of hear it squeaking against the fretboard. Wow. Yeah. I love that record. I actually have the CD really crappily done. In the 90s, the CD version of it. I don't like what they did with these covers, but that's my number 3, Ozzy Osbourne's tribute.
Yeah, you'd think that would have come out right after, but instead Ozzy put out Speak the Devil with Brad Gillis, and it's all Sabbath songs.
That's right.
Yeah. So obviously that was, why they put it out in 1987. We'll never know. I do know that that's the first time I ever heard Crazy Train, because Much Music play the live video of that a lot with Ozzy with his Rod Stewart hair. Okay, so my number 3, another example of superior versions of songs that were not the best recordings, kind of dated recordings. I've told the story about this album many times, the reason I bought it when I did. This is Whitesnake, Live in the Heart of the City. This is from 1980. This was only the second thing I ever bought from Whitesnake after the self-titled album, the 1987 album. This is a Geffen reissue, of course. The reason I bought it is because I wanted Fool for Your Loving. I'd seen the video of the original song. It's one of my favorites. Couldn't find Ready and Willing. Bought it because it was on this. So, you know, Walking the Shadow of the Blues, Take Me With You, Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City. First time I heard any of those songs was on here. And this is also the very first time I ever heard David Coverdale say, "Here's a song for you."
Yeah.
A little bit tamed down than when he would do it in later years where he would scream it, but there you go. A great live album. It also appears as, it's also a double CD, but I'm used to the 7-song version.
Nice. I really want to try and find that on vinyl sometime. Maybe we'll find it at the Record Expo.
Maybe we did. Maybe we did.
My number 2 is a live album by my favorite band. Had this one on cassette. I've got it on all kinds of different versions. This is INXS's Live Baby Live, Live Baby Live, Live Baby Live. You know, it's the album that came out in November of 1991. So there's the CD version. We've talked about this many times. I also have I had the VHS at the time. This is the DVD version. They've since kind of re-released this, I think even like a 4K version, but they kind of mess with the cover a little bit, which I didn't love. But I do have to show, thanks to my buddy Tim, I do have this on vinyl, and this is not something that you see very often, if at all. In fact, I'd never seen this in person until Tim handed it to me. So this is an
the one I got with 2 different records.
Ah, that's right. Yeah.
I ordered it once. It came without a sleeve.
Yeah. So this is INXS live at Wembley Stadium, which doesn't actually exist anymore. I believe they tore it down and created Wembley Arena. So this is kind of, you know, the album after Kick. This is them touring on the X album. I think they did like 111 shows on this tour or something. And it's just a fantastic record of a brilliant live band. And there's a new song on here too, Shining Star, which I also really loved and they did a video for. So anyway, that's my number 2, INXS Live Baby Live.
Okay, so my number 2 is, it's kind of a throwback because Matt already talked about Kiss Unplugged. Now, I was emphatically not a Kiss fan as of 1993, but I remember when we were starting our second year of college, Matt would play this cassette all the time, and I realized that it kind of had the Kiss songs I always kind of liked all in one place. And after hearing this quickly became not only my gateway to getting into Kiss, but it's still my favorite Kiss live album. I don't care what anybody says. There is absolutely nothing wrong with a Live or Live 2. This was new when I got into them, and this was the album. It was one of their best lineups with Bruce Kulick and Eric Singer. Those guys could play anything from the Kiss catalog. And I love the track listing, you know. It runs the gamut. It goes all the way from the early years, Deuce and Watching You, all the way up to the Revenge album, which is a fine return to form. There's so many great versions of the songs on here. Now, again, I don't know how live this is, and it really doesn't matter. It's a good, you know, it's a good collection, good solid collection of Kiss material. This is the 2014 remaster. This also contains Take It Off, which was not on the North American version of any of these. But yeah, I know a lot of people swear by one of the first 2 Alive albums. For me, this is the definitive Kiss live album, although I also love the Unplugged.
Yep. If we were making a list of top 15 or top 20, you know, I didn't want to put too many of the same band on one list, but Alive 3 definitely would have made my list for sure. I think before we get into our number 1, we're going to talk about some honorable mentions. Yeah. I might as well throw right into, I'd feel a little disingenuous if I didn't talk about Kiss Alive. So I have a couple versions of this on vinyl. This one's a fairly worn, Lots of ring wear, but I still love it. And I have actually the very first reissue of any record I ever bought, sort of like a modern Back to Black, when they really paid attention to the printing and putting them on 180-gram vinyl. This is one of the first that I ever bought. Again, a reissue. I don't have a lot of duplicates of records, but I did end up buying Kiss Alive. So that's one of my honorable mentions. I did want to mention this record by the Stereophonics. This came out in 2006. I think this was after their fourth album, their biggest album at the time. They had their first UK #1 hit. It's a song called Dakota. So this album is called Stereophonics Live from Dakota. And, you know, we've heard people talk about how live is Kiss Alive. This album is live. There are no edits at all on this record. And it's, you know, it's career spanning up to that point. And the final thing I want to mention, this is just a bunch of things. I'm going to group them together. I really got into, obviously with Kiss MTV Unplugged, I really got into that Unplugged album stuff. And I do have quite a nice collection of your Nirvanas, your Alice in Chains. You know, I have the CD versions. I have the Pearl Jam. So this is a re-release of 10, but it's also got their MTV Unplugged on the back. I bought all those and I love them. I know a lot of people that consider the Alice in Chains or the Nirvana as the best MTV Unplugged concerts ever. I still like Kiss, but I kind of wish that, you know, I know Queensryche did a really fantastic MTV Unplugged. I wish they had to put that out officially. Poison did one. It was kind of cheesy. I still wish they would have put that out. I wish they had have put that out officially. Same thing with Aerosmith. Quite a few of those bands that we were into, they did MTV Unplugged concerts, but they never officially came out. So maybe someday.
Yeah, with the Poison and the Queensryche, there are tracks from, like, for the Poison, If You Could Crack a Smile and More, there's some of the tracks on there.
Yes.
On Queensryche's 2 CD, Best of Sign of the Times, there's a few tracks from the version of Scarborough Fair on there, which is gorgeous. I mean, the Aerosmith one's a surprise. I'm really surprised they haven't put that out. I've heard that's a really, really good performance. That was them during the Pump era. They were all sober and focused, and even Rat did MTV Unplugged. I heard a bootleg of them. They were doing Born on the Bayou by CCR of all things, which sounds kind of weird, but it actually was kind of cool with Stephen Pearcy's voice. So yeah, there's an Unplugged archive that, you know, and I wonder if they'll ever come a day like the BBC, like when the BBC starts releasing all this back catalog stuff. I wonder if, you know, Viacom or whoever, Time Warner, whoever owns MTV now, might dig into those. So maybe. I've got a couple of honorable mentions. The first one, it's a band that I never rate in a top 10 capacity or anything like that. I just happen to really like this live album. This is Nazareth, and it's their 1981 live album called Snaz, or It's Naz, like it's Nazareth Live. And this originally came out at A&M Records. This is a reissue on Salvo Records. And I just think that the songs sound better on here. Songs like Telegram, Holiday, and Dressed to Kill, Hearts Grown Cold. You know, it's just good sounding. It was recorded in Vancouver, which is kind of cool. They were obviously big enough to sell out, you know, fairly big. I don't know if it was PNE or where it was, but yeah, I've always just really liked this particular live album. I reach for it more than their hits packages if I want to listen to Nazareth. And the other one is the band that I've seen in concert more than any other, not in this period, but this is April Wine. This is their 1985 live album, One for the Road. This is the band, I think, at their peak of popularity. You know, they're coming off Harder, Faster, Nature of the Beast, Power Play. And this basically focuses on that period. But I've seen them 5 times. I think, Matt, you've seen them with me a couple of those times. One of the tightest bands I've ever seen live. Like just a band that's been doing it for a long time and just absolutely know what they're doing. So yeah, they've got a lot of good live albums. I really like the King Biscuit one that came out later in the 90s. It was from 82 in Wichita, Kansas. But this is an officially released one. That's my favorite, One for the Road.
Awesome.
So that brings us to Matt's number 1 live album.
Yeah, my number 1 is actually, so this is again the first thing I own by this band. And technically, it's actually a collection of a bunch of different live albums and material. But it's what really got me into this band. I had this on cassette at the time. Came out in 1991. This is The Doors in concert. Came out May 21st of 1991. I actually kind of lumped this in with, I was listening to this and the GNR Use Your Illusions double albums too. So this was like a double set, and the Illusion stuff. And I just remember that whole year of really getting into both of those. So this has got all the songs that you want to hear by The Doors. And the stuff that really hooked me into this, they've somehow managed to take all these different concerts and string everything together. So it does feel like you're at one really lengthy concert. And it's just all of the interaction by Jim. And sometimes the crowd would be heckling him, or he'd be heckling them. And yeah, wow, this is, I like it just as much for the kind of the crowd interaction as the songs too. But of course the songs are great. This is still my favorite live album of all time, The Doors in concert.
That would have come out in the wake of the movie, would it not?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Probably why it came. There's always a reason record companies issue stuff when they do.
That's right.
So my favorite, people have probably figured out the band by now at least, is Rush, Exit Left. I mean, there's so many Rush live albums, but the period covered here, you know, this is recorded on the Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures tours. And I don't think there was any better band on the planet as far as playing abilities. And I really love, you know, the artwork because it's a collage of elements from all of their albums up until this point. And if, you know, if you're a Rush fan, you know all about these. If you're not, you don't care. But the only thing I will say as a caveat is that if you haven't yet got the 40th anniversary edition of Moving Pictures, I don't have the 5 LP set, hundreds of dollars, whatever. And it's great if you do. But the CD set contains a single live concert from one of the nights that they played at the Maple Leaf Gardens. And it's like this album on steroids. And where this is great, this is a compilation of shows from different parts. Some of it's from Montreal, some of it's from Glasgow. The Maple Leaf Gardens thing on the Moving Pictures reissue is one show, and the track listing goes deeper, of course, it's longer, but yeah, I had to go with this. I really thought about different stages, their 1998 live release, which is a really cool package, but sentimentally, I had to go with Exit Stage Left as my all-time favorite live album. And there you go. So
that was super fun.
Yeah, what that makes me want to do is go see a concert.
Yes, exactly.
So
in doing this list, I actually realized I own a lot of live albums. I mean, there's tons of stuff we never even talked about. I'm looking at a list here of 25 could have made the cut kind of albums. So I guess I'm really into live stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of times, especially when you've got older recordings, they just sound better live. So yeah. There you go. Which is why the oldest cliche in the book is when you watch a documentary on a band, they're like, we want to capture the way we sound live. Well, there's something to that, right? So what live albums would you put? What would your top 10 be? List them below. We'd like to see what people have to say. And thanks for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions.